Hello, welcome to another WPLDN. Paul Topher, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Evening.
Happy to be here.
How are you both doing?
Yep, all good, thank you. And
really
you?
Good.
All good, all good. Very happy
nice.
to be back here. I can't believe it's been a month since we were last here.
My skies are black and the rain is pounding down, so
it's
a faint chance I may disappear.
No. Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. If you are out on live.bigorangeheart.org, welcome. If you're joining us on social, so pleased to have you here with us today, whether that be this morning, this afternoon, or this evening. Just a quick couple of notes. Format for this evening, we've got two fantastic speakers coming up lined up for you. Both speakers are happy to do a live Q&A at the end of their session. So if you are joining us on live.bigorangeheart.org, drop your questions in the live chat. If you are joining us on social, drop them in the comments. We'll make sure that they get shared with the speakers at the end of the sessions. These events are delivered by Big Orange Heart, a non-profit helping to support and promote well-being and positive well-being and mental health within the remote working communities. All the people that you see across this event are volunteering and donating their time, so please do say a big thank you to each of them and everyone that's involved. Speaking of which, I wanted to just introduce ourselves as our hosts this evening. You may notice that we have a new face amongst us this evening. Topher, do you want to give a quick introduction to you?
It's me. Hi, I'm Topher. I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I work for Camber Creative, and I curate HeroPress.com with my wife, Kate. And and we also do hallway chats. We'll have some news about that in a little bit.
Yeah, you absolutely do. I think the pair of you are, yourself and Kate, are incredibly busy across the WordPress space. So thank you for all you do. To be honest, so HeroPress has certainly been a huge inspiration for me personally. I really appreciate obviously the time that you and the other people that have given into to HeroPress.
Oh, thank you.
Paul, do you want to give yourself a quick intro?
Yeah, I'm Paul. I run a WordPress agency in Southeast London, digital, and also on the Big Orange Heart fundraising team.
That you are, and again, very, very grateful for everything that you do, everything that you keep giving into to Big Orange Heart. So thank you. I'm Dan Mabey, founder of Big Orange Heart. Also, just generally keeping myself busy across the WordPress space with various projects going on. But I won't go into that right now. I just want to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Automatic Cloudways, Funnel Packs, Weglot, and Yoast. But instead of listening to me, you can listen to this. Passionate about making the web a better place, Automatic.com. Your managed cloud hosting platform, Cloudways.com. The WordPress multilingual plugin, Weglot.com. Generate more leads for your digital agency, Funnelpacks.com. The search engine optimization plugin for WordPress, Yoast.com. And if you may have noticed on the video there, or in fact on the slides, big.ht/thanks. If you could drop that into your browser, that will put together a nice little tweet that will send out a thanks to all of those companies that are enabling us to be able to deliver WPLDN. These companies are supporting the wider Big Orange Heart project, which, as I say, in turn then enables us to deliver these events. So would really appreciate your support. Okay, I also want to say a big thank you to our supporters, Blue37, Sotic, and Smart Digital. These are companies that are giving time into this. You may notice that, as I mentioned, Leo has changed somewhat into a Topher for this evening, and unfortunately Diane could not be with us. But I see we've got Leo out there on the socials joining us, and yes, I think we've got a huge upgrade there with Topher hosting. So thank you. On to tonight, we've got two two fantastic speakers. Really excited about having both AmyJune and Nicole come and join us this evening. AmyJune will be talking to us and helping us understand how we can make our media more accessible. And Nicole will be demonstrating how we can attract the right clients with our social media. So really quite a strong media focus across tonight, which is a really interesting take. Obviously, the WordPress London Meetup covers a real wide ream of topics, of subjects. I mean, if we're talking about WordPress, how many industries can we encompass into WordPress? There are so many areas of expertise and specialism, and varying levels of expertise across those areas of specialism, that it can always be quite challenging to find topics and sessions that suit that wide range of people. So we are always looking for speakers to come and join us. If you are interested in jumping on and spending some time with us at a future WPLDN, we'd love to hear from you. big.ht/speak. You're going to see this little short domain all over the place, big.ht. It's a short domain for bigorangeheart.org. If you are interested, we would love to hear from you. There is no expectation in terms of experience. This is an opportunity just for you to share your knowledge and share your experiences with the community. So we're looking for anybody that's interested to come and join us. big.ht/speak. Okay, before we get into our speakers, our sessions this evening, though, we got our community announcements. So this is an opportunity, if you're aware of anything that's going on in and around the community, if you're on live.bigorangeheart.org, drop the notes in the live chat there. If you're on social, drop them in the comments. We will try and get them up on screen. If there is anything coming up, then maybe Paul, you could grab those off the chat and get them up on the screen. Really appreciate that. But whilst we're waiting for anything to come in, we got a few bits of news, a few things that we want to cover off, community announcements. Of course, WordPress 5.8, very nearing our general release. So 5.8 beta 4 is scheduled for release today, I believe. So if you are a plugin author, if you are a theme author, then obviously getting into the betas and making sure that everything's working as expected. 5.8 is quite a gargantuous update in comparison to recent releases. The RC is due the 29th of June, so just a few days away, with general release scheduled for 20th of July. I don't know, Paul or Topher, have you had any opportunity to dive into 5.8 yet?
Sort of. I personally am not. I want to be diplomatic. I don't do a lot of Gutenberg work. However, that's partly because there are some things that it has not done for me that I've wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
And that primarily relates to like archive page work and single posts and things like that. It's mostly around pages. But with 5.8, the ability to save templates is really interesting to me. I've admired the possibilities of block patterns where you assemble several blocks and then save that and then can reuse that block. And this is kind of an extension of that, to be able to assemble blocks and then save it and then put it in another page altogether as a whole new page template. That's pretty exciting. I'm really interested in the whole full site editing thing. I think until we get there, I mean, it's kind of neat to be able to design your page and to be able to put some interesting things in a post. But until I can do my whole site with it, I'm kind of waiting. This is a big step forward.
It is. I don't know, where do you kind of sit? I have very mixed feelings across the Gutenberg. As an editor, I love Gutenberg. I think the potential here is phenomenal. I like where it's going and I like where it can go. But I do struggle a little bit with the concept of full site editing coming in at this stage when we've still got so much to get right within Gutenberg, particularly. And are we stretching ourselves as a community beyond what we should be doing? Should we be focusing on getting one core element of it absolutely right, or getting it to a far further on down the road than it is now, should we say?
I'm the only one talking. I don't want to jump in front of Paul here, but in my opinion, we're making WordPress into something dramatically different than what it has been, and maybe that's good. Maybe that's what we need. I will miss the old WordPress. It's what made my career thus far. But everything changes.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think WordPress has to change as well, doesn't it? WordPress has to change to keep up with the competition, so to speak, and keep up with the times.
Yeah. There was a time when Perl drove the web, and then PHP came along, and all the Perl people hated it.
That's right.
And yet here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you mentioned obviously the template editor? It's interesting. It was something that we picked up here. And Paul, this was something that you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much I think the template editor is a sort of precursor for that full site editing. It's the starting point, for that, I think. And I think it's quite interesting. It does, of course, have its limitations in that you can't edit header, footer, sidebar and things. But for people who want to create landing pages and things like that, I think it's a really good start, or should be a really good starting point. It's not something I've played with as yet, but I will do in the not too distant future. See what it's like.
Justin Tadlock did a really interesting write-up in the Tavern, which I grabbed this image from, in fact. And it was really interesting, his take on it. And there were a couple of key points, I think, that kind of stuck out for me. And I think this issue of being able to distinguish between editing content and editing structure was something that really struck out. And he flagged that there isn't too much of there isn't really a distinction between the two. And I just wonder if we're heading into some challenging spaces there, particularly with clients where they think they're editing one thing and actually they're editing something they really shouldn't be editing. Obviously, that comes down to giving clients those particular permissions. But equally, I guess single site owners, site editors that are going in, if there's no clear distinction between what is a piece of content and what is the structure of the site, then I think we can obviously be running into some quite serious issues there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I can totally see a client editing a page and changing the header in a widget and not realizing that it's going to change it on every page.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. We could go into 5.
You could argue that creates opportunities, doesn't it?
It does.
Absolutely. We really could dive into 5.8 for quite some time. There's an awful lot going on in there. If you haven't already, then I do suggest taking a look at the 5.8 beta or the RC coming up very shortly. And I just wanted to give a quick mention. In fact, Topher, I think I'll hand this over to you. That you have
all right. For those not aware, several months ago, Liam and Tara ended their time at Hallway Chats. They were ready to move on to something else, and they were going to shut it down. And about that time, I was thinking with my wife of starting up a HeroPress podcast, and they said we should talk. So we did, and they handed it off to us, and they were doing them every 2 weeks. And of course, with all of our good intentions, fully intended to keep that schedule. And it's been a couple of months now, and we haven't done that yet. But recently, we recorded our first one. It's going to be episode 151, and all I have to do left is to put the transcription in and hit publish, and it's ready to go. So maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, you can see a new episode of Hallway Chats.
And I'm particularly excited to hear that one. Particularly excited not to hear that one. In fact,
you'll have to listen in and find out why Dan is.
You will, absolutely. HallwayChats.com. Yep. If you haven't been able to consume HallwayChats.com previously, take a look at the website. An awful lot of episode 151 due to be released.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And continuing the podcast theme, and this is a bit of an odd one, if I'm honest. I don't normally do this kind of heavy sort of self-promotion style stuff. But the reason I'm bringing this one up is I was able to have a conversation with Nathan on the WP Tavern podcast recently. This has now been released, and it was a conversation about community and the importance of community and various aspects of all sides of it. So I really wanted to just share it. If you're here with us tonight at WPLDN, then great. I mean, this is exactly what we're doing. This is, it's about bringing communities together, bringing people together, particularly in these times. It's been a really, really challenging period for so many of us. And so I just wanted to flag this up. If you are interested in listening to me ramble on a bit more about community, head over to wptavern.com/podcast. And continuing with community, again, really excited to be able to bring this to our community again. Yes, WordFest.live. WordFest Live is happening on the 23rd of July. Tickets are available, wordfest.live/register. This is a free 24-hour festival of WordPress. This is taking place across a global community. We're running it for 24 hours solid, so there is an opportunity for every individual across all the various time zones to be able to participate and get involved. We start off in the Australian time zones. We move on to Asia, Africa, Europe, South America, and then finishing up in North America. We would love to have you join us across the event. If you can, wordfest.live/register. We delivered the first one in January this year, and it was a fantastic success. I'm going to say that because it really was a wonderful day with the community. We had just shy of 2,500 attendees participate across the day itself. We delivered 48 sessions over that 24-hour period. This time around, we've actually got 66 sessions across our 24 hours. So we've scaled things up somewhat. Which means that we are also looking for more volunteers. We're not looking for more people to get involved. We had 66 people join us across the event last time as volunteers. I just wanted to really mention that there are a number of roles we're looking for people to get involved with. We're looking for MCs. We're looking for operations. We're looking for AV operators. All of those information, what those roles are, can be found on wordfest.live/call for volunteers. And I just wanted to put out a thank you to both Topher and Ahmed, who have been leading our volunteer team so far. And if you are interested in joining part of this event, then you will get to spend plenty of time with Topher, which is always a pleasure.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you think so.
Excellent. We also have a call for sponsors. Now, this is an important one. We have got some phenomenal sponsors supporting this event, and for every single one of them, we are incredibly grateful. But we also have a very special level this year, very special plan that we've introduced. We have got a live captioning sponsorship package. Now, that live captioning is going to enable us to have human-delivered live captioning across the whole 24 hours across both tracks. Now, that comes at a cost. There is quite a sizable cost to deliver that. We're looking for companies that will be that are interested in supporting inclusivity and accessibility of an event. If that's your company, we would love to hear from you. Or if you know of a company that's interested in supporting these sorts of features within events, again, we would love to hear from you. wordfest.live/call for sponsors. And interestingly enough, you'll have the pleasure of dealing with Paul, who's on the call, who's on here today. So thank you again. Both Paul and Howard have been giving an incredible amount into this. And if you are supporting the event as a sponsor in any way, shape or form, you will have, again, the pleasure of dealing with both Howard and Paul.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. The couple of other events going on, a couple of other things, and unfortunately we are really running out of time here, so we're going to have to scoot through these quite quickly. I wanted to give a mention out to the WP Diversity Speaker Workshop taking place on the 30th of June. So this is 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. PDT. If you are UK based, it is slightly unsociable hours, 12 a.m. till 2 a.m. But this is focusing. So it's a 2-hour workshop for people with WordPress. From WordPress, from underrepresented groups in WordPress. And I think maybe AmyJune can speak a little bit more into this when we introduce her in a moment. This one, really interesting. Flip WP, Alex Denning and Ian Paulson have released this website recently, Buy and Sell WordPress Businesses. I would love to get into a much deeper conversation with yourselves, Topher and Paul, around what we're seeing across our space at the moment. This cycle of acquisitions that we're seeing across the business space at the moment is it's really quite incredible. I don't know your take. What's your take been on it so far?
Yeah, absolutely, you can just see it snowballing at the moment, can't you? As I think WordPress is maturing, you're seeing more and more businesses being acquired, and people are seeing a lot of opportunities. And I think it's only going to grow considerably over the next few years as digital increases more and more.
Yeah, it kind of took me by surprise. I remember a couple of years ago, people were talking about the WordPress economy and how big it was getting. And a number of people said that the larger companies are kind of hitting their ceiling. And if they want to go somewhere, they're going to have to go outside of WordPress, which made sense. But what I'm seeing is rather than go outside of WordPress, they are expanding inside. Like rather than just continuing to build the one thing they were doing, they're acquiring these other companies and building something bigger. Liquid Web, with all of their acquisitions, it's kind of, you can almost see a pattern of what they're trying to build based on what they bought.
Yeah,
like watching Apple register a patent. They're like, oh, I see what they're doing.
yes. And in particular Liquid Web, you've got the the creation of Stellar WP, which is obviously this umbrella for multiple plugins, e-commerce plugins within the non-profit sector.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting time, and it's interesting that you talk about maturity of the ecosystem. It kind of feeds nicely into this article from, or this piece of research, in fact, from WP Engine. We're looking at, so this piece of research was looking at the combined global WordPress, the economy of WordPress, totaling in at more than $500 billion within 2020, expected to grow to $635.5 billion by the end of 2021. I mean, these are really quite staggering numbers. When we look at the in the report, it says to put the global WordPress economy into context, if WordPress were a country, its economy would rank 39th in the world according to IMF list of countries by GDP. I mean, that's just mind-blowing, these kinds of numbers.
That is amazing. I mean,
it's incredible.
My brain doesn't wrap itself around dollars that big.
I mean, there's lots of zeros.
It certainly is. It certainly is. I think it just goes to show there's this continuous, we've got the continuous ability to grow, to develop. These acquisitions. I've had some conversations and some concerns. I guess I've had some concerns about what we've seen in some of these acquisitions. But when you start to put it into context, when we look at those kinds of numbers, there's always room for further growth here. We may be seeing some of the larger hosting companies hoovering up some of the smaller companies, which, the argument then is, well, are we removing competition? Are we going to, is that going to deteriorate the experience for customers within the space? But then when you put it into those kind of contexts, those kinds of numbers, you think, well, actually, no, there's lots of room for growth here, lots of headroom.
Yeah, and there's, using hosting as an example, there's new hosts coming along all the time. There will be that cycle, I think, really. Yeah.
I thought, I don't know about you, but there's been a bit of speculation, particularly around this piece of research from WP Engine. Are we going to see an IPO in 2021? Are we looking at, is this a bit of a support document, shall we say, for supporting the IPO for WP Engine in this later this year?
Wouldn't be surprised.
Interesting to see. Excellent. Okay, it's amazing how much we get The time just seems to disappear in these conversations. We are now going to invite AmyJune to come and join us on stage. I'm just going to remove my slides, and AmyJune, I'm going to invite you up. Welcome, AmyJune. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi there. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a real pleasure to have you. I'm really excited about this. So we're talking accessible media tonight. Really looking forward to hearing what you've got to share. So looking at your bio, says you are an active contributor in the open source world as an open source community ambassador at Canopy Studios, with a dual focus on both open source community development and inclusivity. I love that focus. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having that focus across our community.
Yeah, it actually came from me not being a developer in a developer world, and I wanted to be included in this open source contribution thing. And then it just sort of escalated to all of the other parts. But it came from just wanting to feel like I had a place in that open source community, because everyone sort of stresses those code contributions. And there's so much more to WordPress than code. You know, we have to do all the other things to get people to come. Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I'm now going to bring up your slides, and we are going to hand the stage over to yourself. If you are watching on live.bigorangeheart.org, AmyJune is going to run a live Q&A at the end of her session, so please drop the questions in the chat. If you're joining us on social, please drop the questions in the comments. We will get those up on screen and asked of AmyJune at the end of her session. But for now, AmyJune, it's over to you.
Thank you, Dan, Paul, and Topher. I want to do a little tiny bit of housekeeping before I start. We're going to talk about accessible media, which means that we support all of our senses. I posted a link to the slides on the Meetup page. There are a couple of slides included on that deck that aren't in this deck for the sake of brevity. There's some links to terms and definitions, and again, I cut those today for the sake of brevity. Most of the images in this deck are decorative and supportive of the information I present out loud, but if they do need more context, I'll describe them. And then also for the sake of brevity, I cut the section about social media accessibility, because at the end of July at WordFest Live, I'll be presenting a lightning talk on accessible social media. So you can join all of us for WordPress Live at the end of July. I want to acknowledge that I'm sitting in Northern California on Ohlone lands. This acknowledgement demonstrates a commitment to beginning the process to eliminate and dismantle ongoing colonialism. Again, my name is AmyJune. That's title camel case for you programmers out there. Like Dan said, I'm the open source community ambassador for Canopy. I am also a hospice nurse, so I understand how some folks have trouble accessing digital assets, even things as simple as checking their email, and how privacy is a big issue for that. I organize a meetup once a month called Ally Talks. That's Accessibility Talks. It's a virtual meetup where we invite speakers and guests, and we talk about all things accessibility, because I do believe that all information should be accessible to everyone across whatever assistive technology or platform that they're using. I'm a mentor for several open source projects, WordPress and Drupal. I am on the WordPress diversity team. I help Jill Binder present some speaker training workshops, and Dan mentioned one that we'll be giving next week, June 30th. And what these workshops do is they help empower folks who come from traditionally marginalized or excluded communities, kind of break out of that imposter syndrome. And we talk about some of the myths around not wanting to public speak, or why people don't feel comfortable public speaking. And then we'll also work on a pitch and a topic to come up with at your next tech event. Canopy brings me here today. We're hiring. Reach out to me if you want more information. But really, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to very briefly talk about some terms and definitions. Again, that link on the Meetup page gives a slide with more, a little bit more detailed information. I'll go into images, slideshows, videos, media players. And then I'm going to leave that social media and testing tool demo for the lightning talk at WordFest Live in July. How do we embrace accessibility? First, of course, we have to understand what it means. In the context I'm going to talk about today, it's about really producing rich, engaging media that's accessible to everyone. Why do we design for accessibility? First off, it's the law, but that's not the most important part. We really want to include that wider consumer base for our content. We don't want to exclude large populations of people from using our products or getting our information or obtaining our services. And accessibility is really essential, not only for developers and organizations that want to create high quality websites, but also the people who design those tools. And according to the WHO, 15% of people living in the world live with a disability. And of those 15%, 2 to 4 experience significant difficulties in functioning. And these numbers are really much higher in actuality, because we can also take into account cognitive disabilities as well, which sometimes aren't counted in those WHO numbers. And remember, as we get older, I don't know about you, but the text on our website seem to get smaller and smaller. You know, our hearing and sight can deteriorate over time. And there's also like situational disabilities or temporary disabilities, you know, noisy workspaces. You're on a train and don't have access to headphones and you want to watch a video. You're recovering from shoulder surgery and you can't use your mouse. And not every disability can be seen. There's pain, fatigue, dizziness, mental health disorders, you know, not just those hearing and vision impairments that we often think about first. And being accessible means everyone can readily access what you're offering. Again, services, venues, content, especially written content. And inclusion does not mean giving folks special or additional privileges. It means that we need to make sure that those barriers don't exist in the first place. We often hear about overlays and things like that. That's why I mention it again. It's about making sure those barriers don't exist in the first place. Some terms and definitions, again, please refer to those slides I linked on the Meetup page. But I want to talk about success criteria about some of these things today. And so we're going to look at WCAG guidelines. Those are the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And these are really a set of criteria about how we measure accessibility internationally. It's developed with the goal of providing a single shared standard for web accessibility that meets the needs of people across organizations, governments, internationally. And WCAG 2.1 and soon 2.2 are becoming the international industry standards. So you might see these references to numbers. And then it's broken down into 3 levels. You see the A, the AA, and the AAA. Each increasing A in the level indicates an additional criteria to follow. And right now that 2.1 AA is the standard to follow. So I'm going to break it down a little bit so it's not so jargony. What makes content accessible? You know, there's 4 broad parameters. You know, we have to make sure that our content is easy to see, so we accommodate visual needs. We want to make sure that people can interact with it, so we accommodate motor needs. We want to make sure that it's easy to hear, or there's a replacement for that, so we accommodate auditory needs. And then we want to make sure that we accommodate cognitive needs and we make our content easy to understand. We want to make sure that the experience is as equivalent as possible, regardless of all of those things we cannot control. And I just want to kind of like really quickly talk about assistive technology, because that's what we're sort of programming our websites and our content towards when we talk about accessibility. You know, there's things like screen readers. Assistive technology really allows and empowers people who live with low vision or cognitive and learning disabilities. It allows them to access information and maintain privacy. It removes a barrier to the internet or digital information. You know, a lot of people don't think about it, but if you have low vision and you rely on someone else to read your emails, there might be sensitive information in there that you don't want shared. So think about it from a privacy perspective. And then I just want to go through a couple of different, I'm not going to explain any of them, but I want to give a shout out to these different assistive technology devices. You know, not only do we have screen readers, but some people navigate websites only using the keyboard. They maybe can't access the mouse. There's text-to-speech systems. There's screen magnifications. Oftentimes those are built into our computers, you know, Command++ on a Mac. Some folks who live with paraplegia might use head pointers or single switch technologies. There's also motion tracking and eye tracking as well. Screen readers. WebAIM conducted a screen reader survey to determine how and why folks used screen readers, and they came up with 87.6% use a screen reader because they live with a disability. And out of that 87%, 71% exclusively rely on the audio of the screen reader. So a lot of the things we're talking about in this media is focused on that 71% who use the screen reader. So we'll start with images. You know, we all really love images. They do several things for our content. They enhance our content, especially for folks who live with learning disabilities or cognitive disabilities. We oftentimes include images in media that support and add to our information and concepts. Folks who live with low vision use images as cues to orient themselves on the page sometimes. And media, including social media, use images for conversions. You know, having images on posts lead to clicker or higher click-through rates, you know, a higher ROI, which is a return on our investment. And they're nice to look at, you know. So images can be major barriers when they're not accessible. So I want to talk about some of the reasons, some of the folks who benefit from accessible images. You know, people using screen readers. The text alternative can be read aloud and rendered as Braille. People who use speech input devices, they can put the focus onto a button or a linked image with a voice command. The text alternative can be read aloud for people browsing speech-enabled websites. And a lot of us use mobile phones, you know, so our mobile phone users, if their images are turned off, you know, especially for people who have data roaming issues or have poor internet connections. And then, of course, accessible images help with search engine optimization, SEO. You know, your images, now that they have text attached to them, become indexable by our search engines. And there are a lot of different types of images. I'm going to focus on just a few: the simple, complex, decorative, images of text, groups of images, and image maps. And we're going to look at these a little closer in the following slides. So we have a simple image. You know, this image conveys simple information, you know, and it can be best described with alternative text, or sometimes you might hear it called alt text. You know, these can be photographs and logos and icons. And alt text is short, sweet descriptions of the content on the image. You know, it's typically invisible to people who can see the image, but it's exposed to those people who are using those assistive technologies like screen readers or those refreshable Braille displays. The description should convey the content of your image and the functionality of the image as concisely as possible to provide access to the content without adding a ton of details. You know, like this is the simple image, the short, sweet alternative text. There's complex images. You know, complex images can be graphs and charts, maybe diagrams, and they contain really too much information to be effectively described using that alternative text that we use on the simple images. So instead, with these images, we describe them with long description. You know, long description is a more detailed description that provides equivalent access to the information on the image. And if you kind of want to boil it down to one thing, to ask yourself is, given the current context of the image on the page, what information is this image intended to communicate? That same information must be provided to people who are unable to see the image. You know, a long description can include any structure necessary to communicate the content, you know, any headings, lists, or table data. And sometimes some of these complex images can be described in the text around it. Decorative images, you know, if an image is purely decorative and doesn't convey any meaning, there are several ways to tell the screen readers or assistive technology to ignore the image. Some examples of decorative images are styling, like borders and corners, you know, illustrative of text but not contributing to information. But I do want to give my opinion on this one. Is if we use alternative text and decorative images, the text should convey the mood or experience of the site to the screen reader users. So if you're using an image to evoke or convey emotion, it wouldn't quite be fair to those folks who can't see it. So, you know, they can be tricky to describe, but we're really doing our website visitors a disservice when we're not describing some of those emotions we might want to evoke. Images of text, you know, readable text is sometimes presented within the image itself. If the image is not a logo, we should really avoid images or text in images. But if you do use an image of text, make sure that the text alternative contains the same words that are in the image. Something to keep in mind is that when we use actual text, it's much more flexible on our websites. You know, we can resize it without losing clarity. You know, background and text colors can be modified to suit the reading preferences of our users. You know, images can really become distorted the more it's zoomed in and zoomed out. So in those situations where images of text can't be avoided, the alt text should contain the same text as the image. We have groups of images. This is when multiple images convey a single piece of information. You know, and what we should do in that case is the text alternative for one image should convey the information for the entire group. So let me explain that a little bit more. Up on the screen, there's a group of 5 images, and combined, they show a product rating. You know, there are 5 images, 3 are filled in and 1 quarter filled in, and 1 empty star, indicating that overall rating for the Volkswagen dealership. The text alternative for the first image would read rating 3.25 out of 5 stars. And then all of the other images would have an empty alt attribute. So, you know, when you have that group of images, that first image conveys the information for that entire group. Image maps, these are complex. They contain multiple clickable areas. They can be park maps, decision trees, org charts, you know, and the text alternative for an image that contains multiple clickable areas should provide an overall context for all of the links. And then each individual clickable area should have alt text that describes the purpose or destination of the link. So in this image of, I live in the Bay Area in California. This is a Bay Area map of all the Volkswagen dealerships. And you would describe the whole image, and then you would describe, you would make sure that you include alt text for those links. That way people know where they're going, what the purpose and the destination of the link is when they click on it. And images can be used as links, including pagination and anchor links. You know, they can be logos, they can be decorative. Images can improve usability of our pages by making orientation and our interactive elements easy to recognize and use. We need to be careful when creating alt attributes for image links, because the alt attribute has 2 requirements at that point. It must describe the image, but then it also must tell the user what activating the link will do. And let me go back to that. So that's a perfect example of the image map. Again, you know, you have that you have that clickable area where you want the alt text, but you also want to describe where that link is going. Slideshows. We all have clients who love slideshows, but from an accessibility point of view, the first rule of slideshows is not to use slideshows. Lots of times our clients want these slideshows, prominently located. Sometimes they're used to provide navigation or show page contents. Slideshows display a few items one at a time. They're also known as sliders or carousels. Typical use of slideshows include those scrolling news lines, tickers. Oftentimes they're featured articles on home pages and image galleries. But I do want to quote something from W3 Schools, that slideshows are disputed from a usability perspective, not just accessibility, but a usability perspective. They're disputed because their content can be hard to discover. So ensuring accessibility can also improve usability. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. They're disputed from a usability perspective. So we want to make sure that we ensure accessibility because that often improves usability. How do we make our slideshows more accessible? So we want to make sure that we style the carousel or the slider to ensure it's usable. So we often, oftentimes we use transitions, animations between items. We want to make sure that we have a way for our users to stop and resume those animations. We want to provide the ability to turn off the player. If that slideshow is rotating, we want to make sure that people can pause and turn off the player so it's not distracting to them if they're reading something on the bottom of the page. We want to provide visible controls accessible to the keyboard, mouse, and touch. So make sure that there's no keyboard traps and things like that. We want to make sure that all users of different assistive technologies can get to those controls. We want to make sure that those controls are highlighted on focus. For those of you that don't know, when you click through something, highlighting on focus shows a user where they are on the page. So we want to make sure that those controls are highlighted on focus. And then keyboard traps. If users can get into the slideshow and change all the controls, we want to make sure that they can also pop out of the slideshow when they're done using it. And back to those controls, be sure the controls are visible. In this picture here, you can see the control on the left is very hard to see. The control on the right that you can see. So remember size and color, and take into account the background color can change when we're rotating through images. A black arrow on a white background, like a wedding scene against a beach, might be seen, but then the next image might be a reception hall where the control is like on top of a dark table. So take into account that the background color can change. Please be sure to have sufficient color contrast. And I can't stress enough that size and color really matter when we talk about these controls. And the last phase of slideshows is making sure that there's a reasonable alternative to the slideshow. The slideshow doesn't have to function if style sheets are disabled, but all the content needs to be available. And again, like images, can you turn off the images, for like maybe folks who have their data turned off, or, have low-speed internet, can you turn off those images and still be able to access all of the information? If you turn off the CSS and JavaScript in your browser, can it be turned off with the same results? So that's sort of your litmus test is if you can go into your browser and disable your CSS and disable your JavaScript and still know what's going on with the images, then you've been successful with your alt text and your slideshow. Moving parts. A lot of times our media will have moving parts. Having content that blinks for more than 5 seconds can be distracting for some folks, for certain groups, including people with low literacy, reading and intellectual disabilities, people with attention deficit disorders. That content that blinks make it difficult or even impossible to interact with the rest of the web page. So autoplay, this isn't autoplay, but I don't like to turn it on. The green behind the Volkswagen will kind of sparkle. When we do have autoplay, we want to make sure there's a method is provided to pause, hide, and stop any of our media content. And this goes back to those slideshows too. And again, autoplay, for those that don't know, that's something that begins automatically. When we go onto our web page, we want to make sure that people can pause, stop, or hide that content when it lasts 5 seconds or more. That's sort of the gold standard, is 5 seconds. And this applies to presentations as well. Some people will have those GIFs in the corner of their slide decks. We want to make sure that those stop after 5 seconds. And moving parts. Let's just talk a little bit about some of the different moving parts we have on our websites. Content that moves or auto updates can be a barrier to anyone who has trouble reading stationary text quickly, as well as anyone who has trouble tracking moving objects. It can cause problems for screen readers. Again, that movement should stop after 5 seconds, or have the ability, to have a control that the user can pause, stop, or play that content. So form notices, a form can blink an arrow near the submit button if the user finishes filling out the forms but does not activate the submit button. An example would be a loading animation we have on our page. One of those preloader animations is shown on a page which requires a certain percentage of a large file to be downloaded before playback can begin. Oftentimes our web advertisements have moving parts. An advertisement blinks to get viewers' attention. You see that a lot on cell phones in the corner of the screen. I talked a little bit about tickers and news feeds at the beginning, but those are the things that we see across the tops of our screen that update information. Let's look at videos. We have to think about how our audience are consuming our videos, because everyone consumes information in a different way. So we need to make sure that we go back to those 4 broad parameters, and this goes back to those auditory needs, so making sure that there's captions. Captions are text versions of the audio that are synchronized with the video. And there are a lot of situations that benefit from captions. We have loud environments like an airport or a noisy co-working space. We have silent environments like a co-working space where you can't turn on the sound. Sometimes content can be better understood by people hearing and seeing the information. For example, a good example would be people who English is their second language, having that captions sort of reinforces what's going on in the speech. Content in text form, caption files and transcripts can be better indexed by search engines. So when we add these, our SEO rankings go up. Content can be used without needing to download video files, for example, to save on data on mobile. And then on captions being accurate. They're not only a good idea, but a lot of higher ed universities make it a requirement that the captions are accurate. So think about this when we do auto captioning versus like going back there and creating better, separating punctuation and grammar and some of our words that are often misspelled. I'm in the Drupal community, and oftentimes Drupal comes across as triple when we close caption using AI. And captions should also include other audio content, dogs barking, music, anything that adds value to the information. Captions can be closed or opened. Closed captions are captions that can be turned on and off, whereas open captions are always visible and you can't turn them off. Closed captions are most common. You know, they utilize the functionality within a lot of the video players we see in browsers. They display closed captions on top or immediately below the video area. Audio descriptions, they're separate narrative tracks that we add, and they describe important visual information, you know, making it accessible to people who are unable to see the video. So if the visual content is being conveyed through audio, there's no need for that audio description. And transcripts, you know, these are the text version of the media content. They should capture spoken audio plus any of those on-screen text or descriptions of key visual information that you wouldn't be able to access without seeing the video. They don't have to be word for word, but they should contain those additional descriptions and explanations. And transcripts allow users of assistive technology to use refreshable Braille and other devices to access the information, you know. And oftentimes screen readers prefer transcripts because they can set the read rate much faster in the videos and play them much faster. And then also, again, going back to that SEO, once you have your content indexed, you know, your SEO value goes up quite a bit. And media players, you know, how do you choose an accessible media player? So I'm just going to quickly go through these because we're coming up on time. You just want to make sure when you're selecting a plugin or a module or extending your website that you select a service to host your videos, that you ask yourself these questions. Does the media player support closed captionings? Does the media player support audio description in a way that enables our users and site visitors to toggle the narration on and off? Can the player's buttons and controls be operated without a mouse? You know, can people who use a keyboard only access it? Are the media player's buttons and controls properly labeled so they can be operated by a blind person using a screen reader? Not only do they need access to the controls, but they need to know what the controls are doing as well. Is the player fully functional, including all of the accessibility features across platforms? You know, in all your major browsers, remember, some assistive technology works best in certain operating systems. Responsive design. There are I think it's 5.11 billion unique mobile users worldwide, and of them 2.71 billion use smartphones. So when we think about our media, you know, we need to think about things like buttons, links, and icons. You know, we have to provide those text equivalents, you know, make sure that they're easy to access. And look, I have a typo, but that's okay. Is there an easy method for entering data on those websites? And then, are those target controls accessible? You know, are they so small or too big that you can't get to the controls to open and close them? And content should not be restricted to a single orientation. You know, we often think of portrait or landscape mode. They shouldn't be limited to one or the other unless it's absolutely essential. And here's some other considerations before I close out is, be sure the control mechanisms can be activated with gestures, movement, and voice. Be sure that your layouts are suitable for mobile devices. You know, a lot of things are responsive first these days, but some of us have some legacy websites that might not display well on a phone. You know, multi-column layout won't work as well on a narrow screen, you know, so text size may need to be increased so people can read it and it's more legible. And a lot of these can be solved by creating responsive layouts using technologies like media queries, viewports, and flexboxes, you know. And then think about high resolution. Many mobile devices have high resolution screens, and that means that we need higher resolution images so the display can continue to look crisp and sharp like they do on desktop. Zoom. You know, all of us sort of use our fingers and zoom in when we can't see things, you know. Using viewport, it's possible to disable zoom. but always ensure that the resizing is enabled, so set the width to the device's width and think about scroll bars too. The text can be resized, but does it wrap? Is it cumbersome because you have to scroll both ways on the phone? It's hard when the scroll bars are horizontal and vertical at the same time. Menus, make sure that your controls make sure that the controls are accessible by different control mechanisms. And then again, back to that user input, making sure that inputting data isn't annoying, because sometimes it can be annoying for users, more annoying for mobile users than desktop users. So is it worth trying to minimize the amount of typing needed when we have our media on mobile devices? So now what? Work with your team. Everybody has strengths, not everyone needs to know everything. So play to everyone's strengths and weaknesses, so work with your team. Communication is key when you talk about media, making sure you set up style guides and style sheets, use pattern libraries. Ensure that your editors, your WYSIWYGs, what you see is what you get, have tooltips, and everyone is trained on how to use those editors. Make sure that you use accessible fonts and color contrast. And remember that accessibility is a moving target. Just because your site media is compliant today doesn't mean that it will be compliant tomorrow, especially when we have a lot of end users or we've handed it off to our clients. Remember that content is always being added to our website. But I can't stress enough how important it is for our editors to be trained on accessibility as much as our designers and our developers. We train our designers and developers to learn accessibility. And oftentimes when the site is handed off to our clients, it does a disservice to not have that same sort of training. Lots of WYSIWYGs are complicated and have all kinds of buttons, and it's really easy to break the accessibility of your website with the more that you offer in your editor. So I just want to, reiterate that a couple of times. And that's all I have today. Again, it's a little brief for brevity. Make sure that you come to WordFest Live in July 23rd, and I have a lightning talk that all I talk about is accessibility with social media. This is good for our folks who do a lot of digital marketing. Remember, a lot of our young people visit social media and use social media to get their news. So having it accessible to as many people as possible is the best way to do it. And then after today, I'm Volkswagen Chick across all of the medias. That's a separate story. That's why I have all those Volkswagen images, but you can find me across like Twitter and LinkedIn at Volkswagen Chick. And then let's open it up to Q&A. I think we have some time. If not, we can always do it offline.
AmyJune, thank you so much for that. I love. This was beautiful because you managed to encompass two subjects that I absolutely love: inclusivity and accessibility, and VWP tools. So, thank you. I think there was so much in there, so much, again, so much content in there that we need to really take the time to consume, because I think we've had these conversations in the past around accessibility. Around if we improve the accessibility of our site, we are only improving the experience for everybody, whether they need that realize they're using those accessible tools or not, or the accessibility tools. So thank you. Always grateful for anybody coming along and talking about accessibility and inclusivity with us. So really appreciate that.
Thank you.
We had a couple of questions. I got a question from Alberto. So what is your opinion about having an image wrapped in an H1? Is it okay to have an alt attribute as a title rather than a descriptive image for SEO purposes?
Let me break that down in my mind a little bit. What's my opinion about an image wrapped in an H1? So first, we need to think about how we're structuring our content, because that's what headings are really about, is structuring our content. I don't think wrapping our images in H1s are best practices necessarily, because when people scan our pages, those H1s, and when people use assistive technology, the way we nest our content, it should be like our scan patterns, because we don't read anymore. right? We just kind of look at our web page and we scan the information. So that H1 is really the title of our page, the main purpose of our page. That's the idea behind the H1. And then our H2s, you know, give like maybe breaking down like what the articles are about, and then our H3s, you know, delineated it even further. But we need to think about it as nesting our information like we do for our college outlines. And then is it okay to have the alt attribute as a title rather than a descriptive image for SEO purposes? So titles, alt text, depending on how you have your page laid out, those can be redundant information for people. You know, if you have the same title and the same alt text, your screen reader users are going to have that information come across twice. So that's something to be mindful of. Do you need a descriptor image? Because that alt text is still going to come through for SEO value. You know, I think we're coming into this phase of designing our websites where some of the stuff that we're used to having is actually redundant. So how you program things in your web page is important. You know, you can have that title because maybe the title helps when it's in your image library for people who are browsing the image library, but does it have to be read or displayed on screen? That's something to think about. And also, you know, thinking about redundancy is if you have a title and an alt text and a description, and then your image is also defined in the context around it, you have that information several times, which can be really kind of frustrating for people. So the first couple of images they come across where they have to come across that information 3 or 4 times can be cumbersome. So remember that when you have things laid out. You can have those things, but whether or not they're read out loud to screen readers is up to you.
I think something that I personally find a little bit challenging in relation to alt text is the how much descriptive text do we include in there? Because I think I often think about if somebody's listening to this and it's becoming really long-winded in terms of the description of that content, is that negatively affecting the experience of that individual? But at what point do you stop describing what is actually in the image?
So I have a thought on that. Like, okay, let's imagine an image of a field of animals. We have several elephants in a field, and one perfectly fine alt text could be a herd of elephants in a field. But say it's a news article about zoo captivity, you know, well, now your alt text changes a little bit because you want to evoke emotion. So you're like, okay, let's think about what these elephants look like. Are they sad? Are they cramped? You know, so adding that information, it depends on the situation and how much context, but that's the perfect thing, you know, like you have a person like headshot of this, but maybe they're crying. But that might not be relative to the information. It depends on how much information and emotion you want from your consumers. But yeah, you're right. Too much alt text people will just leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. We had a question from Lewis. So on multimedia, specifically interactive, are there good examples of digital storytelling which are accessible?
I'm not sure what digital storytelling means.
I've had some conversations with Lewis in the past, and I think what he's referring to here is something along the lines of kind of interactive comic book style content.
There is actually. We were just talking about this in our Ally Talks team meeting a couple of months ago, and there are some good graphic novels, but I can't think of them off of the top of my head. But Lewis, if you want to ask me a question, like send me a DM on Twitter or in any of the Slacks, I can come up with that. And there's actually like a few articles around this storyboard that people have created about this accessible graphic novels, because comics, they're like one of my favorite things, but digital comics have historically been hard for people to access. Yeah.
Yes, I know Lewis has been doing some work around trying to improve that accessibility of digital comics. Yes, it'd be good to connect. Paul, I don't know if you want to grab Nicole's question there.
I'll
put it up on the screen.
No. Oh, there. Oh, okay. Yep. So Nicole, so true, it's better to have captions when English is not your first language. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is where the importance of accuracy comes into making sure that that we go back and correct our captions. Especially like since we've gone in COVID and more of us are online, and we've really broken down that barrier geographically. You know, I organize a couple of users groups, and captions is super important because it just adds that supporting information to folks, because sometimes we talk fast, you know, and when it's not native, you know, it's nice to go back. But I am also hard of hearing, and I have a hard time digitally or like having audio memory. And so for me, transcripts are better than captions because captions fall off the screen, whereas transcripts, when there's a block of text, I can go back and scroll that part I've missed. So that's something to keep in mind too, is that everyone processes information different. So those captions will stay on the screen, but drop off, you know, but those transcripts are, you know, it's more of that like for longevity. So, you know, just something to keep in mind.
Absolutely, thank you. I think this is a conversation we could go on for hours because it's something. Yeah, there's so many aspects to this that we need to be talking more about. And I appreciate obviously the what you're doing within the community in terms of raising awareness and speaking into the need for better inclusivity and accessibility across it. So thank you very much. We are going to have to wrap up because we do have our second speaker, but I just want to say a big thank you for giving your time, for being with us again this evening here in the UK. How best can people connect with you across the internet?
So Volkswagen Chick, it's a German word, so it's spelled Volkswagenchick. So that's the best place. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, but it's really inappropriate because I like to make fun of my coworkers and family, so that's not the best place. But yeah, if you want to like DM me, WordPress Slack is a great place. I'm AmyJune or Volkswagen Chick in the WordPress Slack as well. And I welcome private messages. I don't fear them at all.
Excellent. Well, AmyJune, thank you again. Really grateful for your time. And we are now going to take you off screen and speak soon.
Thank you,
Thank
AmyJune.
you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.
Take care. Bye. And now we have the pleasure of inviting Nicole. Nicole, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. What a great talk by Amy. I'm really looking forward to her session at WordFest in July. I think accessibility in social media, brilliant.
Yes. And leads so nicely into obviously your session this evening. Talk about this evening.
That's what I was thinking. I'm glad I could join the final section of her talk as well. It was really, really fascinating and lots to learn. So great.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to have you here this evening with us. You always bring bags of energy in your session. So really looking forward to hearing your sessions, your talk this evening, how to attract your agency's dream clients on social media. I believe we've got your slides on screen. Let me just bring those up. Oh, do you want to put those into full screen and I'll get those up on for you?
Hang on.
And so while you're doing that, Nicole is a marketing coach for digital agency owners. She's based in London, but originally from Eastern Germany. And yes, she loves the Hof. So we are going to hand the stage over to you now. If you are on live.bigorangeheart.org watching this, Nicole is going to run a live Q&A at the end of her session, so please do drop any questions you have in the live chat over there. Similarly, if you're on social, do drop them in the comments. We will be bringing those up on screen and having a conversation with Nicole after her session. For now, over to you, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Dan, and thank you for having me. I'm absolutely excited to be talking to you and your community today about social media and how you can use social media as a marketing tool to get noticed by your dream clients. I know you might hear the word social media and the immediate thoughts to come to your mind could be, I tried social media, it hasn't worked. I have no idea what to post. Actually, I'm way too busy with client work to do any social media. I'm hoping to champion the use of social media tonight or today, wherever you might be. So bear with me. Let's get going. So just a little bit of background. I'm a very proud WordPress speaker myself. I've worked in marketing now for over 20 years, but I hope I am not boring at all. I'm a chartered marketeer, so I'm a traditionally trained marketeer. I've run my business now for 5 years, and someone who's really introduced me to working with digital agencies, actually Lee Matthew Jackson. I know Paul and Dan know him really well. He's very supportive of his community. So this is just a little bit about me. I want to make sure that I offer lots of value today. So I'm looking forward to hearing your questions in the comments, or if you tag anything, if you're watching the replay. I'm really looking forward to helping you today. So today, I'm specifically going to talk about you as the agency owner, website agency owner, why it's worth for you to invest in your personal brand to increase your visibility on your digital channels. How actually can you get started with creating a personal brand? I know you're all really familiar with branding, digital branding, but where do you actually get started when it's about talking about you? So I have something there for you, a little tool there. I'm going to help you to find your stories, because stories is really what can help you to connect with your dream clients. And everyone talks about it, but no one ever shows how you can actually find good stories. So I will help you with that tonight. Also, I have some examples for you of actually some agency owners from across the globe who really have nailed their personal branding and they're really visible, and I'm hoping that will inspire you. And then to make sure in the end that you also have some really practical examples to apply to your own content, to your own social media. I have some very, very easy content ideas which will work well to help you sell your services and also engage. Now, the reason why all of this is so important, many digital agencies offer a really, really similar service. So this is your opportunity to really stand out in a good way. So I mentioned storytelling is going to be big tonight. So I just wanted to give you a small example of that. Please do indulge me. So when I grew up, would you believe it, I actually looked a bit like David Hasselhoff. Why did I look like David Hasselhoff? Just look at my head, the short sides, the long back. And in Eastern Germany, in former Eastern Germany, we really adored him. Now, how come we adored David Hasselhoff? I mean, he is really such a naff rock star, isn't he? Well, he envisaged all the things we actually wanted. So I dreamt of really fancy cars, because the car we had at home was a Trabant, a very, very slow car. And there was David Hasselhoff with his all singing and dancing Knight Rider. Also, we wanted to go traveling, and we were only ever allowed to go traveling in former Eastern European countries. So watching Baywatch and seeing the golden sands of California. I believe Amy, our earlier speaker, she's actually based in sunny California. That was our dream. But Trabant is really the reality, that little blue car. On the right-hand side, that's my mum and I in Prague, a very, very beautiful Eastern European capital at that time. The only trouble was I traveled to it about 9 times. So this is why we had David Hasselhoff. He had all the things we wanted. He was so popular in former Eastern Germany, but when the wall came down in 1989, we actually brought him back to sing a song on the Brandenburg Gate. And tonight, I'm going to help you to turn your own social media presence from a Trabant to actually a fast sports car. So hopefully that wrapped up the theme for tonight. I hope you're still with me. So a little story about my upbringing. So why does personal branding matter, actually? Why does it help you to grow your agency and to really get to work with the kind of clients you enjoy working with? Well, when you develop your own personal brand, it helps you to show what makes you different, what makes your team different. You get to be, if you do it well, you get to be the real you, and your messaging will become so much more impactful. And you become more visible, which as an agency owner always helps, because you are the person behind the agency, and people really care about working with people as opposed to just looking at fancy tech graphics on your website or fancy logos. So personal branding is really worth doing. You'll be seen as the expert, and often I have this with my coaching clients. So I work as a marketing coach for digital agency owners. Nicole, I want to be seen as an expert. How do I get there? And one sure way of elevating your standing in the community is by doing your personal branding and doing content marketing to be seen as an expert. When you do that, you can get the kind of clients who are fun to work with, who you enjoy working with, and they pay you worth. because price really becomes less of a deciding factor, because by the time someone engages you and reaches out for a proposal, they've already made a decision that they love what you do and that you are the expert and they want to work with you. And also you generate more of the right kind of leads. And I'm just showing you on the right-hand side this example. So this is Victoria Fleming. She's actually a sales coach here in the UK. She works for SaaS companies. Now, I don't know about you, when I picture sales trainers, I always think of very traditional looking people, perhaps in a suit. And she's absolutely opposite. And with her personal branding, you get that sense of energy, that kind of sense of fun. And this is really what personal branding is about, to stand out in a positive way. Now, how do you get there, though? How do you get started? You probably have to have some brand values. You need to know what you're about, what you want to portray to your audience. So one tool I can offer you tonight, a really practical starting point, is to actually think about how you don't want to come across. And I'll give you an example of this. So some of you will know Lee Matthew Jackson. And this is what I imagine Lee's anti-version would be like. So he would be wearing fancy suits. He would always be on the phone. He would, money would be really, really important to him. He wouldn't make any time. He would never talk about having a family. So this would be his anti-version. And for those of you who know Lee, he talks about his family. He really values mental well-being, a life-work balance. So he's absolutely the opposite. So if you would like to do the same and discover your anti-version, how you don't want to come across, there's a couple of questions you can ask yourself, which will really guide you. So what are your nightmare clients like? What was your worst boss? What qualities put you off in people? And those kind of questions will really help you to identify how you don't want to come across. And if you want to have listen to Lee and I chatting about uncovering your identity and how it can really help you to grow your agency, you can catch a replay actually of an interview I did with him recently on Instagram. Now, picture you see here, this would be my anti-version. So relatively serious. I would never, ever, ever talk about being from Eastern Germany and admitting that I like David Hasselhoff, because that would be way too embarrassing for my anti-version. So final thing on this, consider how you don't want to come across and kind of what TV personality you not like. And this will really give you an idea of how you need to shape your own personal brand, because it's exactly the opposite. So I hope that's inspired you a little bit. Now, so how can you then stand out? And one sure way of standing out and getting noticed is really by sharing your stories, because people don't listen to marketing speak, but what they remember is actually really good stories you can tell about your agency, about yourself as the agency owner, about client successes. And this will really help you to attract more of your dream clients, because they will remember you. And I'm going to show you how you can get there. So what I don't want you to do is to be really invisible on your channels, because throughout my work with digital agencies, I have seen so many agencies where when I look at their digital channels, it's very beautiful tech graphics, perhaps even stock photos, but none of their team members are inside, nor is the agency owner. So I really want to encourage you to flip that and to really step out and become more visible. The other thing I want you to avoid, the other mistake I really see happening, is that people are trying so hard to be coming across as professional. We have this perception, because perhaps we work with medium-sized companies that, or even larger corporate companies, that they want a really, really professional agency. But can I just tell you, I've worked in corporate for a long time, and sometimes people get a bit bored. We love to work with a fun agency. We want to know the people behind the brand, because let's face it, often when there's a digital project, it might run a little bit late, or perhaps the decision maker changes. So I want to know who's going to be in that agency to help me through that. So the more you can show of yourself or where you work and your team, the better it is for building trust and really standing out as a good service provider. So don't be boring. That's my message here. Now, look at storytelling. I mean, we have many Star Wars fans. It'd be good to see in the comments if we have any Star Wars fans here tonight. If you are a little bit quirky or perhaps even a little bit geeky, it's completely fine to lean into that. Clients want to see someone who's interesting, who's a little bit different. I have a really weird German accent, and my sense of humor is not really British. So rather than hiding it, which is what I used to do when I was in corporate life, I'm now just leaning into it and I'm using it in my branding. And I'm really happy for people to remember, oh, she's a marketing coach for agencies and she comes from former Eastern Germany. That makes me stand out. So I hope just seeing this picture of these funny shoes will encourage you to do the same. Now, in terms of your stories, everyone always says you must tell your stories, but what if you actually don't feel at ease about sharing your stories and you don't even actually know where to start with your stories? I'm going to show you a brief exercise which I have run for one of Lee's communities. I've had a chat about it with Dave Foy and Mike Killen, and they're really into the story sharing. So I'm going to give you the same tools tonight. So I've got a story finder framework which will help you to identify the best stories which make you look in a good light, which is the whole point of marketing. So let's get started with those. So number one, the first step, if you put yourself into the shoes of your audience, because this is all about you getting noticed by your dream clients, what kind of stories, what sort of themes would resonate for them? I'll give you an example. I often work with agency owners who are families themselves, which means they're quite short of time and they really like to focus because, they want to finish on time because they want to put their kids to bed or they want to be able to spend the holidays with them. So I often talk about family life, being a working mum, some of the ups, some of the downs, because I know that resonates with my audience. Also, I bear in mind, okay, so my auntie version, what stories would she tell so that I would then tell exactly the opposite stories? So I want you to have these two things in mind to set the scene with you, to walk on the shoes of your audience. Then the next step, reflect on what makes you you. And I'm going to pause on this a bit because I know that can be a tricky question, but what sort of things have you had in your background? What sort of jobs have you had? Why did you make certain decisions? What have been your successes? What have been your failures? What's your why? Why did you set up your agency? What drove you? Because we all know running our agencies can be challenging. So why did you decide to take this path? These sort of stories are really, really, really important. So I encourage you to jot them down in a story database. Some people use Post-it notes or ClickUp or just old-fashioned Google Sheets. They all work. But then the third step, again, think about what resonates with your dream clients. What stories do your friends remember you for? Because it's usually those stories which make most of an impact. I remember I came to England about, 25 years ago. One of the things my fellow students at university never got tired about was when I talked about growing up in former Eastern Germany, because that was something so new to them. So when I then considered my own stories, what stories am I happy to share? I actually found a lot of stories in just being from Eastern Germany, because for many people that's quite a novelty. So that was why I came up with talking about being from Eastern Germany. And also, you want to know what stories are best to share, because I am by no means encouraging you to share absolutely everything. I want you to make sure in the next step in this framework to really figure out with your family, with your colleagues, what are they happy for you to talk about? Because that will really enable you to select the best stories where you feel comfortable sharing them. Then, once you selected your stories, or I like to call them cupcakes you take to a party, you also know which ones you're leaving at home and not sharing, but the ones you're sharing, practice sharing them in supportive communities like this and Facebook groups. We have GoWP, we have Agency Trailblazer, Big Orange Heart Group. There's so many events like WordFest coming up in July where you can practice sharing your stories, and I'm absolutely certain you will get positive results. And hopefully then you'll be able to share some of them on your own social channels, and really just do it. Because once you start doing it, you get positive feedback and you feel more encouraged to share your stories. Now, people who share their stories usually are also people who have a strong personal brand. And I just wanted to show you some agency owners to really show you people in your sector who do this really, really well. So I've researched this, I've published some vlogs on this, and I had some really cool interviews with people. And one standout example for me, really, for personal branding is actually Corey Dodds. Now, Corey Dodds is an agency owner based in Australia, and he runs Elle Creative. and he's a branding website strategist. So on the left-hand side, the yellow, you see his agency website. And then on the right-hand side, you actually see Corey's own personal brand website. There's so many things I love about them. One of them being the surprising use of imagery. Do you ever go to an agency website expecting to see a really old-fashioned PC and keyboard? And then on Corey's website, I really love the use of emojis, and his tone of voice is so friendly and approachable. Now, I actually know from Corey that he targets, so in Australia, he targets land developers, property developers, and he's often involved in creating a vision and a website for something which isn't there yet because it hasn't been built. And because his content and his presence on his digital channels is so distinct that in the ideal case scenario, his potential clients have already heard of him and it's kind of made up their mind about working with him before they get in touch. And that really is the power of personal branding there. You are seen as the expert, you get noticed by your dream clients, you look different to the other agencies. So when people come to you, they already trust you and you have built that authority. So definitely, if you want to check someone out, I'll definitely recommend L Creative and Corey Dodds, really, really nice guy. Now, second example here, actually someone based in London. As you know, I'm dialing in from London tonight. And this is Cheryl Letlow. She runs the London Web Girl company. And she has revolutionized the concept of building websites for busy female entrepreneurs in a very short space of time. And look at the sense of fun her website oozes. Really, really confident, and she shows in her personal branding what she could do for her clients, how she could transform their businesses. And just to dig a little bit deeper here, this is her about page on the left-hand side. Let me tell you a little bit more. And she tells some really intriguing stories. I know she loves to change her hair a lot. She likes the odd cocktail, but she also has things on her about page that really raise her authority. So I love the way she considers what kind of audience she wants to get noticed by and the sense of fun she has created. And she's absolutely awesome actually on Instagram, where she has a huge community, and it's a really good showcase for personal branding and how it pays to share more of yourself to really attract your dream clients. Another example, a couple of more examples here. Someone based in South Africa, the lovely Chantal Edward Betsy. Again, she works with busy female entrepreneurs and builds websites in a day. Absolutely amazing personal branding. And I know for Chantal, when she switched up from working for local clients to actually increasing her prices and changing the way she's working, her putting her own personal brand on her website, really stepping out in terms of saying, I'm Chantal, this is what I'm about, this is my story, helped her to get the right kind of leads. It really changed the course of her business. And then very briefly here on the right-hand side, I put fellow German Jan Koch on the screen, who specializes in running virtual events and teaching people how to run virtual events. And he has built this global personal brand where he is really well known and is very, very supportive. And people know that he's an expert in online marketing, and he's so consistent across his channels that it's another way to really come across well with your personal brand. So here are some examples. I hope they inspired you. If anyone wants any of the links, please let me know. I'm always happy to send you the links to these websites so you can have a little look around. So in terms of social media, I wanted to encourage you to really see social media as a conversation opener. You can use it as a platform to show how much you understand the kind of challenges and aspirations your dream clients have. Cheryl talks a lot about women being really busy and her website having such efficient processes that it's really easy to build them. You could talk about the challenges of the business builders you're creating your websites for, and really talk about how you understand them. It allows you to show your personality, show off your agency culture on your social media channels. You can share your history and your why, which is actually, we're always surprised. We take it so for granted where we were brought up, what kind of movies we like, what kind of stories we loved growing up. But actually for someone else, it's really, really interesting. And it's a reason to connect with us. I know one of my Wunderstars, a lovely agency owner based in Plymouth, he loves guitars. Actually, he owns about 15 guitars at the moment, and he uses that across his social media channels because it's such a lovely conversation opener. And finally, you know, about building up your expertise, you can use personal branding to really also share your take on industry trends. So what's happening in the world of e-commerce, what's happening in the world of membership sites, and what's your take on the latest developments and how you recommend your clients and your prospective clients deal with them or take advantage of them. So see social media as a conversation opener. Now, in terms of engaging sales content, because you really want to strike a balance on social media between brand building, people finding out about you, but then also giving a hook for them to get in touch with you and really to make you memorable. So here are some really practical ideas. So for example, if you developed a new brand for a brand new client, you could share a little bit behind the scenes, you know, show their original brand, perhaps a little glimpse of your branding questionnaire or your process for the discovery call through to actually delivering the final website. You could show different logo versions. You could offer a glimpse into the client reveal and add a client testimonial. And this would make really powerful content for social media, which shows off what you could do for other clients without being too douchey about it, too salesy. So that's one idea to try. Just an example. So I recently went through a rebrand actually from Lollipop Social over to Wunderstars. So my agency then talked on their channels about the original website. They showed pictures of a new website and they showed some glimpses of the logo concept. So there were lots and lots of information for them they could use on their social channels to connect with more of their dream clients. And the beauty is because you are creating digital assets, this is really relatively easy for you to do. Another idea here, talk about your agency growth stories. And I've put this on there because, you know, when we're active on LinkedIn, marketeers who work in companies, they see agencies talking about moving offices, recruiting new staff, perhaps sending their pre-COVID, sending their staff to awards dinner because they're celebrating a success. These are the things which show off that you are successful and that you are growing. You know, even things like showing off your office space, you know, talking the story about how you got started and how you've grown over the years and introducing your team are all milestones in your agency, which would provide really great content opportunities. So I would encourage you to share some of these growth stories. An example here, one of my clients, Thomas Amos from Designbox, you know, he's got on the right-hand side, here's the team eating some pizza. And I think it was just post-COVID, so it was the first time I could all get together again. One of his team member, Emily, really, really lovely lady. She'd worked with for 3 years. So they celebrated on social media that it was her anniversary. And you can see none of these post ideas are really difficult to create, but they show the sense of we are a team, these are our people, we are growing, and we are really, really proud of our team members. So maybe this could be something you could copy as well. Now, finally, also, I encourage you to become visible yourself as the agency owner, because whether it's you're one-man or one-man agency, or you work with a team around you, you are really driving the culture. So could you talk about your journey, what brought you to designing websites? What do you do outside work? You know, we are all people and we want to get to know, we want to have a small glimpse of what you are like outside your work. So what could you share? What do you do for your lunch break? What TV shows do you like? Whatever you feel comfortable with sharing about your outside life, I would say you do that because it really pops out and it really is noticeable. If you attend events like this, what have you learned? What interesting points of discussions could you bring up? And really also talk about your why. And then for one of my clients, it turned out that actually in the end, this wasn't his first agency. It was already his second business and he had never considered talking about it. But actually it turns out his target market were startup companies. And, you know, they really valued the fact that this wasn't his first business, but I only got a whiff of this once he started sharing some stories about it. So it is a really powerful tool and worth you trying out on your own channels. Just to give you a bit of a glimpse, you know, I also walk the talk, or I always mix that up. So, you know, there's me with my personal trainer throughout lockdown. I shared that on social. There's my mum, who's really influenced me in becoming a business person myself. Some of my favorite clients, some of my family. You know, I talk about these things because they make me who I am as a marketing coach. And whenever I post these things, I've had really good responses on social media. And I also wanted to show you these images because you can see none of them are of high production values. You know, you all have your best tool probably already with you, your smartphone. We have amazing cameras on our smartphones. So that I wouldn't want you to like, oh, I have to wait until we have a photographer or a videographer. Nowadays, people really value authentic content on social media. So don't be afraid of just posting pictures you've taken yourself. And here are just some examples. It's really worked for me, and it's also worked for my clients. So just coming back to David Hasselhoff, when you look at these tools, you know, how you come up with the anti-version of yourself, how you really relate to your audience and aspirations and pain points, and how you use storytelling to stand out, to really increase your personal branding, you can be as successful as David Hasselhoff in Germany. You know, this is a picture just of a recently in recent years of David Hasselhoff singing in German main TV. He will still fill stadiums in Germany because he's that popular, because he really had that connection with his audience. He was singing about looking for freedom, and when we were hoping for the wall to fall, you know, when we wanted to be reunited, he really tapped into that sense. And really good social media and good storytelling and personal branding is similar. Figure out where your audience is and meet them with your stories and draw them in. Okay, so just as a summary of what we talked about, a bit of a recap here. So we talked about how having a personal brand and increased visibility as the agency owner can help you to get more leads, because suddenly you stand out from the competition. Your agency has a human, a relatable face. So I really encourage you to take that step. Start by just coming up with your anti-version. You know, how do you not want to come across? I remember when I was working with Dave Foy, who's an online course creator, he really struggled with that concept. And when we talked about douchey Dave, all the things he didn't want to be for his audience, and it really unleashed his storytelling ability. If you get a chance, check out his website. He has got the most beautiful story of where he came from, why he is doing now what he's doing. He's got some beautiful pictures about his past, and it really draws you in. Actually, every time I read it, I get goosebumps. So he started off by doing the story framework earlier I talked you through, and by looking at his anti-version, and that really unleashed his storytelling abilities. Lean into what makes you different. Don't be afraid. I have a silly German accent, strange sense of humor. I'm really tall over here. In Germany, I'm not. I'm very average. So whatever it might be, you know, any quirky sides you have, just own them and just lean into them. I have a feeling you will get really positive feedback on that. Now, I do have a freebie for you, which is basically a download for 30 days of content inspiration, which you can get from my website, and I'll show you a link. And it will be a really good mixture between stories of yourself as the agency, stories from your team, stories from your clients, and also industries development. So it gives you lots and lots of inspiration to have some social media content which gets you noticed by the right kind of clients. And also I have a YouTube channel where you can get some more tips, and I'm just going to very briefly show you the links to these. I'm very mindful of time. I just had to look over at the time. So there's some more resources for you. So first of all, here's your freebie. You can get it at wunderstars.com, content inspiration. It's a little brochure with over 30 ideas to inspire you to post more engaging content on your social media. So you get lots and lots of prompts. Also, I've published on YouTube, so if you want to just binge watch some tips on Instagram, especially also LinkedIn, you know, how as an agency owner can you get noticed on LinkedIn? I have a whole playlist related to that. I would love to see you on my channel. It's Nicole Osborne Wunderstars. Yes, so this brings me to the end of my talk. I can't wait to actually get some of your questions. So I'm going to just stop sharing, and I hope I have someone ready for me for some questions. We just see. There we go. Dan, I'm back. Hello, Dan. Hello, Paul. Hey, Topher. Oh, so nice to see you all.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you so much for going through this. Again, it's just a couple of things. You've absolutely cleared up what the fascination with the Hoff is for me. So thank you.
Excellent.
On a more serious note, you've come in with your boundless energy again, something you're clearly incredibly passionate about, and you know, it's such an important subject across this. You know, building our personal brands. We focus so much, I think, on our brands that, you know, our personal brands really can suffer. So thank you.
Oh no, you know, it's my pleasure. And my personal branding is all anchored into fun, because I've learned in my coaching work that people are more likely to do something they're perhaps not 100% comfortable with if they have fun. And I like to have fun. It's important, right? We all work remotely. You know, it's been a tough couple of years. It's nice to just enjoy it. And yeah, this is why my personal branding is very energetic. Because I can't hide that. I can't switch it off. And I think that's where personal branding is powerful, when you lean into what makes you you and into your quirky sides.
Absolutely. I think something that really stuck with me was, I think the first time we met was at one of Lee Jackson's events.
Yeah, it was.
And I can still remember the lollipop.
Excellent.
You had the cardboard cutout of the Hoff at that event as well, didn't you?
I do, Paul. And you know, the funny thing is, I still have it. Because it's just, you know, it reminds me, because I haven't always found it easy to share my stories. You know, I like after this, I'll be exhausting on the sofa. But I know it makes the messaging around social media and increasing your visibility. You get it more if I tell you a story around it, like the Hoff did it. So yes, absolutely. At the time, it was Lollipop Social, it was Sweet Like Social, and I've rebranded to Wunderstars at the beginning of the year. But hopefully, it still is energetic and fun.
Absolutely. I thought it was really interesting that talking about our anti-versions, and there was a funny comment from Lewis. The code reviews we get at work sometimes come from anti-versions of me.
Lewis, it must be. Do you know? Now just see how you can use that in your own social media marketing to not come across as that. Thank you, Lewis. I really appreciate that.
I guess where do we start with this? Because it's quite a difficult question, I guess, because we're asking what are we not like? What don't we want to be like?
You know, I find the best is to start off with a celebrity you can't stand. Honestly, that because you know we all watch movies, TV shows. So if there's someone you can't stand, and you're like, yeah, I don't like this person. There's reasons why I don't like the way they come across. I don't want to come across as that. That's usually a good starting point. When I was talking to Dave Foy about it, we were like, okay, so who do you not like? What do you not want to be? And he was very much, I don't want to come across as this person who knows it all and who's just perfect all the time. And that's just a really good starting point, because when you flip it, and you're like, but actually, I'm really happy to admit that I have these imperfections, or this is my learning curve. That's really unleashes it. And I know it's not terribly easy, right? I know it's like the whole reflecting on what are we like, what are we not like. But I always say, you know, have a walk, listen to a podcast, do something relaxing, and you will get there.
Yeah, totally. Because I think people quite often get into a situation where they sort of leave their corporate job and start out on their own because they want to be able to do their own thing. And then as that starts to form, they quite fall back into this sort of corporate vision of themselves, which is not how they really are. And that's exactly what you're trying to overcome, isn't it? So yeah,
totally, Paul.
Totally, yeah.
Because people have these sort of corporate handcuffs, right? Where they told me to always sound like this. This is the branding we had. And, you know, I wrote these brand guidelines. I used to be a marketing director. And you fit into this brand because you created it and you're really proud of it. And then you're out by yourself. You have to find a version of yourself you are happy to be, who you are, and to portray that to your audience. Because hiding away when you're running your own business, I'm not saying it's a recipe for disaster, but it won't allow you to create the kind of business you love to get up for in the morning, right?
But it is a recipe for disaster.
It just makes it so much tougher, doesn't it? Because if you sound and look like everyone else, I remember I started off as a marketing consultant in London, and I didn't even have a picture of myself on my website. And honestly, there's a lot of marketing consultants in London, and it's the same. You know, you Google web designers in Australia or in any other country, and there's so many of us. So it's nice to stand out, to really say, this is what makes me different. This is why you will enjoy working with me. No, it's not a total recipe of disaster. It might just be more of a struggle.
I love the fact that you speak into this idea of being selective in terms of what we do share, because obviously there's that
it's
we
very
need to make
important.
sure that we're protecting ourselves in this process as well, and obviously the people around us as well.
Yeah, it's a massive step, Dan. And once you had that conversation with your family, you're like, oh, okay, they're happy for me to talk about that. It kind of just like, then it's okay, because it's important that some things we're happy to share and others we need to keep private. Now, honestly, for me, it's easy to talk about being German because there's so many other Germans who have shared those experiences. It's not private, but there are lots of other bits I wouldn't want to talk about on my socials because for me, that's not the place to share those stories. So yeah, be really selective about it. And when you are, and you're very intentional about it, all of a sudden you're like, I've got like 3 or 4 stories. Everyone said, they're happy for me to share them. And you just start doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I guess one of the challenges that I on a personal level face is the time. You're trying to carve out the time. It's trying to constantly focus on, making sure the business is out there, the messaging out for the business, or the messaging for the charity, or the messaging for the other things other than me is out there. I think
it is really tough, isn't it? And we wear so many different hats. Even if you were only to work on one business, you were finance director, HR director, marketing director, sales director. God, I've probably forgotten quite a few. So in essence, I always find when people switch it slightly and they make their own marketing, I'm working on my business like a client project. And all I mean by that is that you know how long it's going to take you. You cut it into steps and, okay, I have to do this 3 hours, 1 hour, 30 minutes. And you make time in your diary for it because that's what you would do for your clients, right? You look at a client project coming in, okay, scoping phase is going to be taking that long. We're doing the wireframes and then we're going into the build. Oh my God, now this is like my technical knowledge now. I can't take it any further, but you kind of put it into steps and you know how long it's roughly going to take you, right? And it's the same with your marketing work. An email, a blog, how long does that take you, the posting, and then have slots in your diary. And if you have, let's say, maybe 20% of your time in your diary to do these things, and then in the end, you only make 10% of those happen, that's still better than doing nothing. And every small step leads to a big action. I know that's something Lee Jackson is really passionate about. And I totally agree with him. Cut it down into small steps. And in the end, there will be a big change because, one thing builds on the next.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally. I think it's very important to work on the business, not just in it.
Right, Paul? Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. Sorry, Dan, I interrupted.
No, not at all. I completely agree. I think that, that issue of getting stuck working within the business, it's a real issue. So we do have to, how do we take ourselves up a level and, as you said, work on business?
Yeah, I mean, when you can, I think outsourcing is really great. But I know when you're getting started, it will take you a while to be able to do so, right? Because obviously you're taking all sorts of work on just to get money and you have to pay the bills. So it's definitely start outsourcing as soon as you can and just be really mindful of managing your own time. And I guess I remember I felt like I had to be really quite selfish because I started my business, my son was 2. And, there's so many things I could have done because everyone does when my kids are 2. And I guess I had to make some sacrifices by still reserving some of the time just for me and my family. And it also meant sometimes saying no to friends or not being able to socialize as much as I would have liked to, or, not learning as much as I would have liked to, because I'm like, no, okay, I have to build my business now. For me, that is my content marketing, speaking at conferences. This takes time. And you weigh up what really matters, what can drive you forward, and where do you have to say no. I don't know. Have you guys heard of the essentialism? Where you apologies. This is quite late for me, so my memory is going. But it's basically by Greg McKeown. Someone recommended this to me, and it just is really lovely about the pursuit of doing less and figuring out what really matters to you. So I think when you know where you're wanting to head in terms of your goals, it's easier to say no. This is not a good opportunity, but this is a good opportunity. So I encourage you to just focus on what it is that really matters to you. And I think we're also different, right? It's not necessarily always success. It's not always money. Sometimes it's about the life-work balance, our mental well-being, and how much time we get to spend with our family, right? So know what it is for you.
Absolutely. Nicole, I think that's a beautiful place to wrap up, because that's, you've just, for me, you've hit the nail on the head there in terms of, where we need to be focusing and how do we shape our businesses and how do we shape our time?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's always such a pleasure to be with you. You're always full of energy, and it's just wonderful. And not just that, you're full of incredible knowledge that, just appreciate you coming on and sharing that with us and the community. So thank you so much for giving your time this evening.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
What's it like being a delight all the time?
Oh, Topher, I'm not sure my husband would agree. So,
I wasn't asking him, was I?
Yeah,
thank you. I thank you. I've really learned, for me, self-care is really important. So this morning I did a Pilates class. You know, a couple of days ago I went for a walk, and I've learned how much time I need to do these things to be this version now, if that makes sense.
Yep, it does make sense.
It's a balance, right? Topher, that was the funniest question ever. I love it.
Excellent. Well, we could keep going, but I think we do need to wrap up. So, Nicole, thank you. It's always a pleasure, and look forward to connecting with you very soon. Just before you disappear, how best can people connect with you?
Best place is my website, wunderstars.com, where you will find all the links to my social media and my blog. So yeah, come and see me on wunderstars.com.
And just hitting the button too many times. wunderstar.com/content inspiration.
That's right. And you get the story finder exercise as well.
Excellent. Nicole, thank you so much. And we shall speak soon. Take care.
My pleasure. Dankeschön.
Thank you, Nicole. See you.
Sorry, I got a bit trigger happy there.
Yes.
It's been an awesome night. Thank you very much to both AmyJune and Nicole for giving their time this evening. We are going to wrap up now. I just wanted to very quickly run through a couple of things just to say thank you to our sponsors, Automatic, Cloudways, Funnelpack, Weglot, and Yoast. If you could, we would really appreciate you thanking them via big.ht/thanks. We always love to understand what you have and haven't enjoyed about our events, /feedback if you are on live.bigorangeheart.org. big.ht/feedback if you are on social watching this. Our next event won't be in July. Unfortunately, it falls right just a couple of days after WordFest Live this time round. So we're actually going to be back in August. So we're taking a little bit of a sabbatical from WPLDN so we can deliver WordFest.live, which is taking place on the 23rd of July. As we mentioned earlier, 24-hour festival of WordPress. We would love to see you come and join us. Registration is now open. We also have the schedule on the website. As I mentioned earlier on this evening, we're also looking for sponsors that can particularly support our live captioning packages. We've discussed this evening multiple times, the importance of live captioning and the ability to enable individuals to partake in our events. So please do head over to wordfest.live if you are interested. We're going to head over to our socials, live.bigorangeheart.org/room/social. Feel free to start up a table, jump on an existing table if you are over there. If you have taken anything away from this evening, if you've enjoyed the content, which we really hope you have, please do consider, if you have the ability, to make a donation into Big Orange Heart, big.ht/give. If you're on live.bigorangeheart.org, you may have noticed that there's a little ticker down at the bottom of the page, bottom left-hand corner, saying total raised. Click on there. You'll be able to make a donation directly in the platform now, rather than having to go elsewhere to do it. I just want to say a big thank you to Topher for stepping in at the last minute and supporting us this evening. Topher, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Topher.
Very welcome.
And Paul, you know what? Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's all right. I don't expect no more than that. That's
Same
fine.
old,
That's
same
cool.
old.
Cool with me. Cool
Always.
with me. It's just good. It's good to have Topher on board.
No, honestly, all seriousness, it's a pleasure to be able to work with you across this, and I really appreciate both of your time today to be able to help deliver this event this evening. Also want to say a big thank you to both Leo and Diane, who unfortunately couldn't be with us this evening. We should be back as full team back on August, whenever the date was. Thank you, Paul.
26th.
One of us is paying attention. Excellent. Topher, Paul, anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up?
Good night. Thank you.
Keep your stick on the ice.
Excellent.
Love it. Excellent. Thank you all. As I say, if you are on live.bigorangeheart, head over to the social. The link is up on the top of the page, and we shall see you in the tables in just a moment. For now, take care.
See you, everybody.
See ya.